Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? All right then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sightings happened in Southeastern Oklahoma in January of 1982 in a small community in Southeastern Oklahoma. My grandfather had a farm. My grandfather and I and my cousin, we were out. We were going to hay my grandpa's cows. It was bitterly cold out, and there was a light snow falling. And this was probably around 4:30 or 5 o'clock, where it just started getting dark. And my grandfather has 31 acres, and he had like anywhere from 28 to 30 head of cattle, bulls and cows and calves and such. Well, we walked to the barn and loaded the old trailer, the old hay trailer that he used to have. We loaded it down with just square bales of hay, and he had this old Ford 9N tractor. He fired it up, and we took off out of the lot there at the barn. And of course, one of us kids had to jump off to open the gate to go down into the pasture. Well, we got the gate open, and he went through, and we closed it and hopped back on the trailer, the hay trailer. We are out there hanging the cows, being silly, goofy kids out there goofing off and playing around. And we were 9 years old at the time, throwing hay bales and helping him, cut the metal wire that's around the hay bales. We was cutting it, throwing like little squares of hay to all the cows. And we went around and did this probably for about 30 minutes or so. And it started getting a little bit darker. Anyway, there's a branch that runs through that property, and it's still there to this day. Of course, back then it wasn't grown up as it is now. Well, this branch, the Arkansas River, runs a mile north of where my grandfather's farm is at. Well, we were out there, and my grandfather was finishing up. He walks around and gets on the tractor and goes to take off, and then he stops. My cousin and I, we were in the back of the old hay trailer. It's like an old pickup bed with wheels on it. My grandpa, he stops the tractor and jumps down, and he goes, "You kids come here and look at this." So us being, 9-year-old, goofy kids back in the day, my grandpa is like in the middle of us, and I'm on one side and my cousin is on the other side. And he gets down on one knee and he goes, look over there between those two trees. And it was like two trees, but the trunk was all one piece. And there was a gap between the two bigger tree limbs. Well, we got to looking and looking. We're like, "Well, what are you looking at?" And he points and he goes, "Look right over there." Leaned up between these two trees, what I call two trees was two big limbs in the tree trunk, was this 7-foot tall black creature leaned up there just watching us. And his shoulders, he was just massive. We seen his shoulders and his head. His hair was probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 inches long. The thing that got my attention was that its head was conical shaped. and we couldn't see any facial features. Its shoulders were just huge. I mean, wide. I'm saying maybe 3.5 feet, maybe a little over wide. We stood there and we watched for a minute to see if it would move. And it never did move or anything like that. It just stood there, leaned up between those trees watching us. Well, my cousin and I, we all three seen it. My grandfather, we all three saw it. And it scared me and my cousin so bad that my grandpa was on the tractor and we took off running to open the gate back to the barn lot. When he got into that lot, we beat my grandfather back to the house. I mean, it scared us that bad. And he told us after that, he was like, don't go down in that pasture. Stay out of that pasture. Stay away from that branch. Don't go near it. And my grandmother had asked, well, what's going on? And he had told her what we had seen. And she just laughs it off. And she's like, oh, no, there's not. There's nothing down there. Ever since then, that's how I got hooked on looking for Bigfoot and getting into doing my Bigfoot investigations on my own. And I'm 50 years old now. And then 5 years later, there was a dirt road that went up by my grandparents' place. And one of our family members lived up on the hill. Well, I would walk up and down that dirt road all the time, not thinking anything about it. And it's like, I'd always look and watch the cows and see how they would react. We had cows and we had a couple of horses behind the barn. One day, this was during the summer, I was up there with my grandparents and I had walked up that dirt road to the other family member's house. And I heard these weird noises down there on that branch. Well, I didn't think anything about it. I was like, well, it was like, it's nothing. It's probably a cat or something like that. I didn't think anything about it. So anyway, I go into the family member's house and I told her what I heard, and she's like, oh, Shelley, you're hearing things. And I said, no, I'm not. I know what I heard. Anyway, I'm up there playing with my other cousin. She was little bitty at the time, a lot younger than me. We were just playing and having fun. And it was started getting late. Well, I told them that I'm going back to my grandparents' house. So I took off. I left. I started walking back to the house, which wasn't very far. I mean, it's like a stone's throw away. Not very far at all. But as I was walking back to the house, when I got to the lot there behind the barn, there's another lot where we had our two horses behind the barn. I heard this. It sounded like a lion's roar, and it spooked the horses and the cows. A lot of them stopped and looked back down towards that branch. That scared me because I was by myself. It was probably around 7 or 8 o'clock. So, I mean, it was still daylight out, but it was starting to get a little dark. I just took off running to the house. I told my grandpa about it. And he told me, he said, he just repeated what he had said before, don't go down in the pasture, don't go down to the branch. And I was like, well, I wasn't down there. I was walking back to the house from the other family member's house. I just, went on about my evening, our evening and stuff, cook supper and all that and help with dishes and stuff and put things away. And the next day, I go back up to play with my cousin again, my little cousin. I'm not thinking anything about it. Everything to me appeared to be normal. Didn't think anything about it. Well, that evening around 7 or 8 o'clock, it was getting kind of dark. And I told them, I was like, I've got to go. I said, I'm going to go to the house. As I'm walking back to the house, there's a road. There was another road across the highway down from my grandparents' house. As I'm walking down our dirt road, I see this figure, and I couldn't tell how tall it was or anything, but it was black, and it was big. And I thought it was just somebody, like a human walking down this road. Well, I was wrong, because what I seen it do just totally blew my mind. I stopped below the barn. There's like a little hill, and then the barn. There's the horse lot, and then the barn. I stopped and I watch it. This thing is walking down the road. There's no traffic whatsoever down this other road. And this thing crosses the road, goes on the opposite side of the road, and goes up an embankment, pushes the fence down, and just steps right over it like it's not even there, and walks off into a tree line. And I watched it until it disappeared. I took off running to the house again, and I told my grandparents. My grandfather was like, well, it could be the same one. Of course, my grandmother, she's, no, it's nothing. That was somebody, that was a person. And I said, no, this looked just like what we had seen back in 1982 when we was out there on the pasture, haying the cattle that winter's evening. But this thing it was big and black, and it had the same shaped head. After that, I never did see it again or anything. I don't know where it went or what have you. In 2008, this sighting took place in central Oklahoma. I was working late one evening. We had just got done at the yard. Well, I jumped in the truck and I go down this dirt road. It's like 7 miles west of town. Before I get to the road that goes south, the dirt road that goes south, I seen this reddish brown Bigfoot standing right above the bar ditch. There was no trees around or anything. And at first I thought I was looking at a cow, the back of a cow. And it wasn't a cow because it was standing there on 2 legs. I went back the next day and I looked for footprints. We didn't find any footprints. Its hair was reddish brown and it was big. And it was probably 6.5 to 7 foot tall, and it was thick, real thick, like it had been eating really, really well. I know there in that area, there was a bunch of sand plum thickets, and we would go pick sand plums. Well, you can make jams and jellies and all kinds of stuff like that with them. Well, we're out there picking sand plums, and we find these barefoot tracks. You can see where they start, but it's like you couldn't see where they went to. It's like you could see a line of barefoot tracks, and you wouldn't be out there walking around barefooted because of all the stickers and thorns. And I'm talking goat head stickers, sand stickers, but these tracks just literally petered out. There was no place for them to go except for up in the bar ditch, which was full of thorns and stickers and briars, and go across a fence that way. But this creature that I saw, it had pointed ears. Its head was like set right down on its shoulders. The back of its neck, it's like it had no neck, but there was like 2 or 3 fat rolls back there. And the skin under this thing's hair was like, I want to say a white. It was light. And the shoulders, I mean, it was just massive. It was probably 4 feet wide. That's how wide the shoulders was on that. The other person that was with me seen it as well. And I was like, stop, go back. Let's go back and see if it's still there. And they wouldn't turn around. I mean, it scared them pretty bad. And I was like, turn around, stop the truck, go back, go back. You know, I was like, we got to see this. We got to make sure this is what we're seeing. And they were like, not having any part of it at all. Anyway, it was facing south from where we was at, because we was headed west and it was facing south. There was a field that had been like freshly plowed. I don't know if it was soy or what. I can't remember. That one's been so long ago as well. There's an old cemetery out there as well. I don't know if it was like nesting behind the cemetery or the Cimarron River is just straight south of there. I was told by two other people that they were with their wives and they seen it below the Cimarron River Bridge. And they told me, they said, well, y'all saw what we saw. And they seen it like a year or two before. And they said that it scared them so bad. They said they couldn't get up the side of the bank fast enough to get out of there. And they said it's like it was just down there, just squatted down there, just messing around in the water. I asked them, I said, if y'all ever go back down there? And they said, no. They said, we will not go back down in there. After that, I never did see it again. We did find those weird tracks out there on that dirt road by those sand plum thickets, but we never did see or hear anything out there. And then in March of this year, my third sighting took place here in Southeastern Oklahoma. This was on our farm, which was my grandfather's farm. It was late at night and it was cold out. I think it was kind of misting out. My dogs had to go outside, and this was about 12:30 at night. Well, I take them outside so they can do their business. And I'm not thinking anything about it. And my dogs take off running to the backyard to the corner of the fence. And back there, it's like black. I mean, it's pitch black, especially that time at night. And down along the branch, it's all grown up now. I mean, there's bodark trees, thorn trees. I call them devil's thorn trees. The big old long thorns, they're about 3 inches long, maybe longer. It's just full. Well, my big dog, she took off towards the back corner on the north side of the house to the fence. She starts barking. So I go and I walk around the north end of the house. I'm in the front yard. And I walk around the north end of the house. Now, we have a motion light that when you walk by it, it's going to set it off. So when I walked by it, it triggered that light. Well, I stood there in the light. Our big dog, she's barking. And then my little dog, he comes running around there. And they're both barking. Well, I go pick him up because I'm thinking, okay, there's a coyote or bobcat or something around. We have had black bears come through there as well. Years ago, there was one that got into the barn where the grain bins were at, but that was years ago. Anyway, I'm standing there and I'm listening. All of a sudden, I hear this jibber jabbering. And I'm thinking, what in the world is this? And I could kick myself in the tail because I didn't have my phone on me at the time. It was on the charger. I stood out there and listened to it for at least a minute or two. And there was two of them. And it reminded me of like a mother and a daughter, like young daughter having a conversation, because the younger one was getting excited. And as she got excited, she would jabber and it would be louder. And the mother, the other one, it was in like a monotone chatter. I can't explain it. I mean, that is the weirdest thing I'd ever heard. And it reminded me of the Sierra sounds that I've heard before. It sounded extremely similar to that. Unfortunately, I did a Bigfoot call, which I let out a whoop, and it went dead silent. I just wished I could have got it on recording. And that happened in March of this year. But I have never heard that before. And I spoke with somebody else about what I'd heard. This person told me that she has heard that same chatter, that jibber jabber. It's like I told her, I said, could it be a beaver? bobcats, birds. But this, I don't know. But it reminded me a lot of the Sierra Sounds, is what it reminded me of. So last summer, when we were up there in 2021, another family member has livestock and cats. Well, she feeds them around dark. This is my fourth Bigfoot encounter. We were outside with our dogs in the yard, and all of a sudden we get this foul, pungent, smelled like rotten eggs, something dead, wet dog. I don't know. I mean, it was bad. I told my husband, I said, "Do you smell that?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I had told him before about my Bigfoot encounters I've had up there. I told him, I said, "They still come through here." So we stayed out there a while listening. And of course, the cows are up eating. And of course, they're hearing something off down in the branch. They get spooked and they'll turn and they'll look. These cows are cows that I would not suggest a stranger walk out there, because these cows are mean. I mean, there's no bulls. There's just cows. They're limousines, and they're very temperamental. And if they don't know you, they'll run you out of that pasture. And they would look toward that branch when that smell would come through, and they would just stand up there and stare up on the hill. And when these creatures pass through there, you can smell them. But then when they leave the area, that smell is gone. I mean, it just dissipates. It's gone. And it still goes on to this day. They still come through there to this day. A few years back in 2017, we were walking down in through there, and the branch and the pasture, and we were just looking around and stuff. I mean, you go out down in there, it's like you're on a treasure hunt, because you find things from a long time ago. I mean, old pieces of glass, pottery, all kinds of stuff, old Sanka coffee jars. I mean, it's just neat. Anyway, we were walking along down in through there, and we got to looking for Bigfoot tracks. We found 3 Bigfoot tracks down in there. They were older, but my husband put his foot by one, and it was much bigger than his foot, and he's got a big foot. These were bigger and these were wider. I would say probably 13, 14, maybe 15 inches. I did not have a tape measure to measure, but they still come through there. And the only thing that we can think of is that they come through from either the Poto River they pass through, because the Poto River is about, I want to say, 1.5 miles to 2 miles east of us. And then the Arkansas River is a mile north. And the only thing that we can think of is that they're passing through, going back and forth to either the Poto River or the Arkansas River. I've also heard of another encounter that was east of our place. Early one morning, this person was out with her dogs before she had to go to work. She said that she heard like something wailing down off the Poto River. She said it was loud. She said this was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And she said it scared her. She said she has never heard anything like that before. And I asked her, I said, "Have you heard it anymore?" And she said, no. She said she didn't know what it was, but she told me that whatever it was had the ability to wail for a long period of time. She said it had like a deep lung span, air span. And she said it wasn't a cow bawling. It wasn't a bull bawling, bellowing. She said it scared her. She said that she got her dogs back in her house and then she had to go to work. And this was, gosh, I can't remember what year she told me that was, but it was before she retired. But she said she had never heard it again. We're still having activity in our area. It's pretty much a hotbed for the smells, the odors that these creatures put off, Bigfoot puts off. I heard that jibber jabbering. I've never heard that before. I don't know. But the Sierra Sounds is the best, is the closest thing that I can relate that to. I mean, it just blew my mind. And I wished I would have got it on recording on my phone. And I didn't. I will say this. I'm not afraid of them. I'm more curious than anything. And my first Bigfoot sighting that I had in January of 1982, that is what got me interested in this field of research or investigations that I do. Ever since then, I have been hooked. There are people out there that say that they don't exist. Well, go down to Southeastern Oklahoma. You'll run into them. They're out there. Got to be at the right place at the right time. And nobody knows when that is. So it could be any time. I have also put out apples in the trees high enough to where the cows can't reach them. I did this, I believe it was last summer. Some had been eaten by like other animals like raccoons and stuff, but some of them were gone. And this is around the time when we would smell it come through. And it happens on different occasions. But it's like around feeding time for the livestock and the other domestic animals is when these things come through. But we don't fear them. I would not want to be super close to one or run into one face to face, like up close and personal. I wouldn't want to do that. When my grandfather and I and my cousin seen it in January of 1982, we was probably about 10 yards away from it, but it's like it didn't move or, anything. Its face was like, it was black. I could not see any ears or anything like that. These Bigfoot encounters and Bigfoot sightings that I've had are like burned into my mind. I can't forget it. And I won't forget it. I won't forget it. So I haven't told very many people about these because non-believers, the skeptics, oh, well, no, they'll laugh at you and stuff. And it's like, whatever. I know what I saw and they do exist. And those were my Bigfoot sightings.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown, no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, bucking hay bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something coming backwards and double time, looking at the soul and the drumming, look Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music, yeah. Somebody going backwards, backwards in double time. Getting to the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out. I don't run from banjo music. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm, ride chicken porch swing, mama's best sweet tea kind of sound.